Now, Tommy Robinson has left the EDL. Do you think this is a change of heart, or is it a desperate bid for more publicity? Two of the Luton-based leaders of the far-right English Defence League have left the group, citing concerns over the dangers of extremism within their group. The head, Tommy Robinson, and his co-founder, Kevin Carroll, announced they're stepping down at a press conference in London last night, adding that their group had become, quote, part of the problem. Well, our political reporter, Paul Scoynes, was there last night. Paul, what happened?
Well, Ian, it's quite interesting, this. They said it's been in the offing since February. That's when they've started really to start thinking about whether or not they want to continue in this group. And they've been working with another Muslim called Mohammed Anwar on a documentary which is going to air on the BBC soon, called When Tommy Met Mo. They said that it's because of rising concerns over the number of right-wing extremists saying they were part of the EDL. Tommy Robinson, also known as Stephen Lennon, says he was never against Muslims, just Islamic extremism. And he told the BBC yesterday that he made this decision because he could no longer keep those extremist elements of the EDL at bay.
When some moron lifts up his top and he's got the picture of a mosque saying boom, and it's all over the national newspapers, it's me. It's when I pick up my kids from school, the parents are looking at me, judging me on that, and that's not what I've stood for. And I want to, and my decision to do is to be true to what I stand for. And whilst I want to lead a revolution against Islamist ideology, I don't want to lead a revolution against Muslims.
Now, it was often the impact the EDL marches had on communities which people had a problem with. Lots of aggressive language, things being thrown, often violence. Did he mention any of that?
Yeah, I mean, he did say that was becoming an element which had caused him concern. He said that Kevin Carroll and he couldn't be at every march overseeing what was going on, and he said that the sight of a white pride flag at a recent march in Manchester had really sort of tipped him over the edge, was the last straw for him. However, he said he was still proud of that. He said he would do the marches again if he had to.
I don't regret the demonstrations. If you're asking if I regret seeing individuals, yes, I do. Yeah, it's never been what I've wanted. When I've met Muslim women who said that they felt fearful, I've met them myself. So if you think for 1 minute I feel proud about that, I don't. But do I regret the demonstrations? Do I regret forming the English Defence League? No, I don't know. Because what it's done, it's brought the topic to the forefront. It's brought many issues to the forefront. The groundswell of support, I believe it's been part of the solution to where we're at now. But what I don't want to end up being is part of the problem.
They were a very controversial group, of course. Politicians in Luton hated them, and they were accused of dividing communities, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one politician said to me that they were a stain on the town. I think it's fair to say that there are mixed feelings about it. There are some people who think that they are a legitimate voice for concerns, but whether they were that sort of articulate voice that they could be, perhaps is up for debate. Certainly, Tommy Robinson said they were a voice for some of those disaffected communities, and they still could be that voice, but this time perhaps against all forms of extremism.
I don't want to let down those supporters of the EDL, the decent people, because so many people see it as an outlet, and it's actually giving them a voice, because let's face it, working class communities in this country don't have a voice, and when they're angry and frustrated, there's an undercurrent of anger in this country, people need to understand how powerful that anger is and frustration. And what do I see doing? That's to work out a strategy and a vision with Quilliam to see how we can channel our passion, but in a more constructive manner. I
guess one of the good things about the EDL is that we knew where the EDL were, what the EDL were doing, and where and when they were gathering. I suppose with Tommy Robinson, these two gentlemen leaving the EDL, some members of the EDL saying it will still go on. It probably won't. It'll be running around like a headless chicken. Does this leave the door open for other extreme right-wing groups to kind of move in?
I think it does, and I think the concern is especially because of the rise of the neo-Nazi. That's a quote element, which is what Kevin Carroll told me. They do say that they are worried about it. It is also a very much a real concern for some external observers as well. Jamie Bartlett from the think tank Demos. We'll talk to him later on. He wrote a report called Inside the EDL, and he says that without Tommy Robinson, they may be taken over by splinter groups. He said that they were in some ways keeping some of the really unsavoury speakers out, and now they can't do that. Now, last night, Kevin Carroll did tell me that they still had control of the websites and of the Facebook pages, which were the sort of way of getting information out to their supporters, and he said that was going to continue. He said that they're meeting with regional leaders today, and that they, will ensure that they stamp extremists out of the organisation. But I did say to him, well, why haven't you done that already? You said that that was partly the reason for you staying in there. And Tommy Robinson did say that he was very worried about those elements.
I feel awful and I feel terrible, and part of the reason why I haven't wanted to leave many times is because I haven't wanted to give splinter groups, extremists, a platform. Which is why, if you listen to what I'm saying, I don't want to just combat Islamist ideology now that I've left. I want to combat those splinter groups, because I feel as passionately against them as I do against Muslims.
Now, they've gone off to... Robinson has gone off to join Quilliam. Have they both joined Quilliam?
Well, I think so.
Right.
I'm not sure you can join it. It's not like... I don't think there's a card.
Is it an ideology or something?
Scheme.
What is Quilliam? I don't know enough about it.
Well, OK. Imagine... I don't think they'd mind being described as this, but imagine, like, the opposite side of the EDL. Imagine, say, or sort of the other side of the extremist scale.
Yes.
Okay, so you've got far-right extremists who aren't in... Well, some are in the EDL, but obviously, that's the very sort of one side of the scale. On the other side of the scale, you've got sort of Islamist extremists, and that's what some of the Quilliam founders were. They were Islamist extremists. Some of them did fight in Afghanistan with the Mujahideen.
Yes.
Some have come to Luton and sat in on extremist meetings. They have, if you like, taken that same journey that Kevin Carroll and Tommy Robinson say they now have, and have sort of got away from that sort of that sentiment. They, have turned around. They've been trying to moderate, if that's the word, the former, the more extreme forms of Islam, and say they've had some success. However, Tommy Robinson said that he and Carroll actually needed their support in order to leave the EDL.
We need help, we haven't got all the answers. We've got this passion, we've got a groundswell of support, we've got a love for our country, and we want to do things the right way now, Now, to get there, we need the support of Quilliam, which is why I've reached out with Quilliam to ask for the support. And I envisage wanting to run an organisation similar, myself, that is tackling extremism on all fronts.
Well, Paul Scoins, thank you very much for that. Later on, we'll hear from local Muslims and a man who infiltrated the EDL. Tommy Robinson has left the EDL. Well, do you think this is a change of heart or a desperate bid for more publicity? Two of the Luton-based leaders of the far-right English Defence League have left the group, citing concerns over the dangers of extremism within their group. The head, Tommy Robinson, and his co-founder, Kevin Carroll, announced they're stepping down at a press conference in London last night. Well, our reporter, Justin Dealey, has been out asking people in Luton about this. Justin, what have you been asking people?
Yes, hello, Ian. Of course, the EDL were formed in Luton, so I've been asking people this morning in the town, has Tommy Robinson brought shame on your town? And here's what people have had to say.
Well, I don't think so. He's just standing up for what he believes, really. Some people took it a bit too far, but I don't think his intention was to do that, so no, I don't.
I wouldn't say total shame. I said the way his group went about certain things was wrong. They did sort of look like hooligans, but having spoken to him a couple of times, I could sort of see where he was coming from, but he just sort of went about it the wrong way. But I think with him leaving, and also Kevin Carroll, I reckon they'll probably have no direction. They'll probably be a bit worse, to be fair, because I think it'll just be a bunch of blokes shouting.
No, I don't think he's brought shame. I think he's made the right decision. I think they were starting to get a bit extreme.
Now that he's left the group, do you think a number of supporters in this town will leave the English Defence League as well?
I think a few will. Yeah, I think a few will. I think they'll realise what might happen. I mean, there's a possibility they could get more extreme, couldn't they? So I guess they will. The more sort of like more thoughtful, peaceful elements will go. So the better elements will leave, won't they?
And just to get this absolutely clear, you're not an English Defence League supporter, you're just somebody who's taken a keen interest because it's loose, and these are views that you've got, not based on you being a supporter.
Exactly, yeah. I've never been a supporter of the EDL. I sort of like, the only interest I ever show is when they're on, on the news and stuff like that. It's part of our news, our daily news, in fact.
And it's your town.
And it's our town. And the EDL only came about because of the booing of the soldiers. So so that situation, that's what brought shame to our town. The actual booing of our soldiers, that brought shame.
The announcement by the two Luton-based leaders of the far-right English Defence League that they've left the group has been welcomed by one of the town's MPs. Tommy Robinson and his co-founder Kevin Carroll say they can no longer keep extremist elements of the EDL at bay. The MP for Luton South, Gavin Shuker, is now demanding an apology.
I would take what Tommy Robinson and Kevin Carroll have done and welcome it. I am welcoming it. But I think it would go with a lot more enthusiasm if they were to apologise for the hell they've put my town through over the last 3 or 4 years.
The two Luton-based leaders of the far-right English Defence League have left the group, citing concerns over the dangers of extremism within their group. The head, Tommy Robinson, and his co-founder Kevin Carroll announced they're stepping down at a press conference in London last night, adding that their group had become part of the problem. Well, our political reporter, Paul Scoynes, spoke to Kevin Carroll last night, who told him why they'd left.
We've left the English Defence League, myself and Tommy Robinson, because we believe the time is right to make the transition from a street protest movement, which we believe only has a certain shelf life. We believe it's achieved its goals, it's got us to where we are today, and it's been reverberating around the whole globe. It's a global brand name, the English Defence League. Who better to work with Muslim organisations in challenging Islamists, extremism and Nazism than two lads like ourselves that have founded an organisation that have proved our mettle, if you like, and are prepared to put their heads on the block. Because, my friend, listen, our lives are ruined. They have been. The death threats, the attacks, the violence, the fear, the intimidation. It's constant.
But that's what some of the Muslim communities in this country feel they've received from the English Defence League.
Yeah, but we were.
You've got to accept that.
Well, yeah, and I apologise for any innocent Muslims that have felt intimidated by the English Defence League, right? But you have to remember, just imagine how many non-Muslims are scared about. I mean, look, we've got Lee Rigby, we've got 7-7.
But all of these are minorities. They're tiny minorities, in the same way that your organisation is a minority.
Yeah, but it's not a tiny minority. If you were being brutally honest, right? If you were being brutally honest, you would have to say, do you honestly believe that what we're saying, as like Tommy says, that a lot of the people won't agree with the tactics, and they won't want to come onto street protests because they think, oh no, I'm not for that. I agree with what you're saying, 100%. But the street thing, the way it goes on, is not for us. That's millions.
But you say it's a global brand name, but it's a global brand name you've lost control of because you yourself say that it's been infiltrated by far-right groups.
No. We've not lost control of it. Well, we still had control of it. This is what we're saying.
But Tommy said he didn't want to be the face of an organisation.
Just an organisation that allows them to come in as soon as we stop showing up. Now, you have to get it right. What we're saying is that unless we attend every single demonstration, these parasitical vultures, right, these neo-Nazi types, fascist, racist, whatever you want to call them, these splinter groups, well, they're always in the wings. They'd be there, but they couldn't come in.
You've created a monster, haven't you? Because you've basically created a group which is now, as you said, a honeypot to these sorts of groups, and you've just said, I don't want to do that anymore, and you've walked away.
No, what we've got is we've got an organised structure of regional organisers across the country. That's our structure. And then we have divisional leaders.
They're not working, are they?
No, but
they're not keeping those bad people out.
No, but what we're saying is to the regional organisers, we've got a big meeting with them tomorrow. So what we're saying to them is, look, it falls upon you now to remain true to what our core message was, which is non-violent. But we believe that it's run its course.
You've made it a busted flush, haven't you? By leaving.
Well,
the co-founders say we don't believe in this anymore. You're asking them to pull out.
No,
that's what Pritium have said. Pritium said that. And you said we'd like people to follow our lead.
We're asking the genuine supporters
So what's that going to
believe in
leave?
the core message.
Well, what's that going to leave, though? The not genuine supporters under the old guise of the EDL?
No, but if that just leaves the extremists and the Nazis and the neo-Nazis and all the racists, then they were always there. And to
you've created a nice little banner for them to stand on.
No, because we've took preventative measures to counter that already. We've maintained control of the website, so they can't use that, and the fan page. So they can't use that. And that is their platform to get it out there to the world and to the 160,000 people plus on it. So they can't use that.
Well, that was our political reporter, Paul Scoyne, speaking to Kevin Carroll last night. I'm joined now by Safian Sadiq, who is the chair of the Berry Park Contingency Group, which was set up in reaction to the formation of the EDL. What's your reaction to the news, Safian?
It's, to some extent, I would say it is a positive piece of news that we can look at it and think that there is some hope in the future for places like Luton to have a peaceful future, a more harmonious future. But I think listening to this interview, which I think sheds more light on some of their views and the way they're not stepping back from the fact that neither of them are apologising or stepping back and saying I will stand up and say I was wrong, these views are harsh, I was pushing hate in communities. They're not saying that.
They say that their position was always against radical Islam as opposed to moderate Islam,
which is not true. They've been in towns like Luton, and they've stood up against all members of the community. They've not stood up against just the radical elements. If they wanted to do that, they could have done that. They've gone around all of Britain causing hate, intolerance. As a result, it's led to people being hurt, people being injured. It's led to young people in prison, young people on both sides in prison because of the hate they're pushing.
Quilliam have said that there is a problem with radical Muslims in Luton itself. Well, how would you react to that?
And I would agree that there is a problem. We cannot deny that there's a problem, but I think just the way Kevin mentioned, there's parasitical vultures perhaps on both sides. And there is a possibility that we can work together. But I think what's important here is Tommy and Kevin, neither of them are stepping back and saying that, you know what, I'm sorry for all the pain that I've caused in the last few years. Both of them, they've said they're moving away. I really hope that it's a step in the right direction, but there is no preventative measures, like your reporter said. I don't think taking away the fan page of from these parasitical vultures is a solution. We're now going to have a group of people that we've always said that were pro-Nazi. They were pro-Nazi when they came Luton, making Nazi chants and salutes, and they're pro-Nazi at the moment. And I think it's about time that he's acknowledged that he's got a huge problem. He's created a monster, but now this monster is going to go around Britain actually pushing and really causing more harm and damage because it's got no leadership.
Is it going to do? There are three things I could see that could happen to the EDL. One is a responsible leader comes in and takes it over and tries to keep it under control. The second one is it does get taken over by neo-Nazis and fascists and becomes even more unpleasant. Or the third thing is it just dies because without Tommy Robinson and Kevin Carroll pushing it, it just collapses. Is that not a potential?
There's a hope that it does collapse, and I sincerely hope it does collapse, but the chance of finding a responsible person within the EDL, that's absolutely ludicrous because it's full of people that are pushing the same views. These are mad people, these are disenchanted people that are exactly the same as the people on the opposite side that they're fighting against.
Could you, as chair of the Berry Park Contingency Group, could you see yourself and your organisation cooperating with Quilliam?
We put our hand out to Tommy Robinson for the last 3 years saying, sit down, let's talk, because we do not want to prepare our town every year for a ridiculous march that makes this town look like something in the Middle East, a Gaza Strip, with barricades and police and riot police on the streets. But he's refused to ever step forward and actually talk to us. That, for me, suggests the fact that it's not... And he's not saying it's a change of his view or change of his opinion. All he is saying is he's taken a different approach. And with the with the elections coming up, there's a lot of speculation around why he might be doing what he's doing at the moment.
Why do you think he's doing it?
It could be possible that he's preparing himself, and he wants to keep all of his supporters, his genuine supporters. He might be preparing himself for the elections. And I think that's unfortunately a far more scary prospect for the people in Luton and communities like Luton, because he's trying to make his views more palatable, and they're not palatable. He has been pushing out views that are pushing hate and causing...
You say they're not palatable. There are lots of people listening to this now who do actually think that they are palatable, that they think that the kind of core message against extremism and against violence is actually valid.
I think whatever he says, there's parts of his message. I am standing up, and I've said time and time again, 100% behind extremism, 100% behind removing extremism from communities, removing grooming from communities, standing up for the fact that there should be a fair, equal process for everyone. We accept that there's parts of his manifesto and parts of what he says that are what the genuine British public or the white working class are feeling and are going through. And it's not to say that we totally disregard that. We do stand up and say that there are some valid points, but to push it in the way he pushes it and some of the messages that it comes with, he always has said that he is anti-Muslim. He slips up time and time again, because like last night he's turned around and he said it's only militant Islam, but 3 weeks ago, he was causing huge issues up in Stopsley when there was a charity football tournament.
But he's joined up with a Muslim organisation, or an organisation that has Muslim members.
And I hope, I'm a person of faith, and I really hope that this is a turning of a page, and tomorrow we will see a changed Tommy Robinson. But I do think that we have to step forward with caution. It doesn't mean that him going with Quilliam is somehow we've got a magical solution here, that he's going to be more tolerant.
Finally, the Bury Park Contingency Group, or do you have a relationship with Quilliam? Would you be looking to start a relationship with Quilliam?
We're happy to start a relationship with anyone that is supporting the people of Luton, so we do not have to go through what we've been through in the last few years. And I hope that Quilliam and Tommy Robinson step forward if the parasitical vultures decide to set up a march without him in Luton. I really hope that they come in and step in between and try and make a difference to the community and really show some positive action, not just words.
Well, I've just been told that when Paul Scoynes, our political reporter, was speaking to Kevin Carroll last night, the subject of possibly standing for some sort of election was raised. Kevin Carroll said, never say never. So it looks like it could be a possibility.
Unfortunately, yes.
Safian Sadiq, Chair of the Bury Park Contingency Group, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Tommy Robinson has left the EDL. Well, do you think this is a change of heart or a desperate bid for more publicity? The two Luton-based leaders of the far-right English Defence League left the group citing concerns over the dangers of extremism within their group. Tommy Robinson and his co-founder Kevin Carroll announced they're stepping down at a press conference in London last night, adding that their group had become, quote, part of the problem. Well, Luton MP Gavin Shuker is calling on them to apologise to the town for the hell the far-right group has put the town through. Our political reporter Paul Scoynes asked Kevin Carroll whether their group had brought shame on Luton.
I can't imagine people, you finding a cascade of people, individuals, saying, we are so ashamed of being from Luton because of the English Defence League. I think they'd say we're so ashamed of being from Luton because we've had mass bombers and murderers and terrorists from Luton over the English Defence League, because we've killed or maimed or hurt no one. So, you have to get that into context and perspective. So I challenge that. Right?
What about all the costs, though? I mean, like Luton Borough Council,
yes,
you're not a big fan of theirs.
Nope.
But they've had to spend, with the authorities, millions of pounds, allowing you to go about your democratic right.
Yeah.
That is the taxpayers of Luton who've had to fund that.
Yeah, of the nation.
But of Luton.
Yeah. But we've demonstrated all over the country, and we are taxpayers. And in a democracy.
So you're happy that they've spent millions of pounds policing what were, in some instances, violent marches?
What price democracy? What price do you put on the fact of facilitating your democratic freedoms to right to assembly, to right to protest about something that you have genuine, legitimate fears and concerns about? You can't put a price on it. And when you start talking about money for the cost of our demonstrations, those costs are split 50-50 between the leftists and the UAF. right? So all those costs are cutting down the middle because it costs just as much to police their counter demonstrations, right? But also, you have to look at, if you want to talk about costs, do you know how many billions of pounds extra a year it costs for security in this country because of the threat from Islamists? Billions. So weigh it up. A few million for our protests trying to highlight the problem of Islamism and Islamist extremism in this country and to deal with that problem, or billions of taxpayers' pounds on the extra security having to be implemented because of those Islamists. So, you know, let's get it into perspective. You're talking about sweetie money.
Well, that's Paul Scoynes speaking to Kevin Carroll last night. Well, earlier on, I spoke to Safian Sadiq, chair of the Berry Park Contingency Group, which was set up in reaction to the formation of the EDL. He says he understands why they were formed.
We accept that there's parts of his manifesto and parts of what he says that are what the genuine British public or the white working class are feeling and are going through. And it's not to say that we totally disregard that. We do stand up and say that there are some valid points, but to push it in the way he pushes it and some of the messages that it comes with, he always has said that he is anti-Muslim. He slips up time and time again because, like last night, he's turned around and he said it's only militant Islam. But 3 weeks ago, he was causing huge issues up in Stopsley when there was a charity football tournament.
But he's joined up with a Muslim organisation or an organisation that has Muslim members.
And I hope, I'm a person of faith, and I really hope that this is a turning of a page, and tomorrow we will see a changed Tommy Robinson. But I do think that we have to step forward with caution. It doesn't mean that him going with Quilliam is somehow we've got a magical solution here that he's going to be more tolerant.
Jamie Bartlett is from the think tank Demos and wrote a report called Inside the EDL and joins me now. Morning, Jamie.
Morning.
What do you make of what Tommy Robinson has said about why he's left the EDL?
I think overall I'd sort of take him at his word for the reasons he's left. And it's true, since the very beginning he has had lots of difficulty with dealing with more radical right-wing elements within the group. And that's partly a result of how the group operates. You know, anyone can turn up to a demonstration. Really, you just click Facebook and you're in. There's no formal membership structure. And frankly, for someone like Tommy Robinson, I know it sounds like a strange thing to say, but it's actually quite a difficult job. You know, he has had death threats against him. He has a guard with him all the time. He's often in hiding. I hope, and like I said, I take him at his word, but I hope what he's seeing and what he's saying is that there are better ways of trying to change society than going out and getting into brawls on a Saturday afternoon. And if that is the case, then I think we should, yes, we're obviously cautious, sceptical, we wait to see, but I think we should take his word.
Why do you think he's doing it now? There are talks, of course, that he might possibly be standing for some form of election at some point.
Personally, I think he probably does have some general vision of himself getting involved in politics. I think that's true. But he says, and he said this to me in the past, that he decided to leave quite some months ago, actually, and it was the events in Woolwich that convinced him to stay on. I mean, I think in a Newsnight interview he gave yesterday, he said that it was when he was in prison and he came out of prison and he saw that a lot of the far-right elements had come back into the English Defence League that he had been trying to purge, that he decided this was just not the right way of going about things.
Both Tommy and Kevin are asking that if the EDL continues, that whoever takes charge gets rid of those far-right members. Is that possible?
I don't think it is possible. I think the way that the group operates is that inevitably it attracts all sorts of very different people, and it's very, very hard to control. The reality is that when you're in charge of an EDL region, you need numbers. You need numbers on the street, and you can't control who turns up to your demonstrations very easily. You can certainly try, but it's extremely difficult. The reality is that Tommy and Kevin Carroll are really sort of spokespeople for a number of regional divisions of the English Defence League, all of which are often quite different. I can't see a natural heir coming up and taking over the group as a whole. I think it will probably stay more as a collection of smaller EDLs that will be doing their own thing.
There was a significant number of British press, but also press from all over the world at the press conference last night. They have, Tommy Robinson at least has gone global, hasn't he?
He has, yeah, and you know, it's quite a remarkable story. I mean, in some ways, the English Defence League is one of the first, as I see it, it's one of the first sort of social media groups that's actually begun to have a proper sort of impact in the real world. The English Defence League has tried, I think, to draw on a broader base of support across Europe, especially of disgruntled people that feel like there's some kind of creeping Islamization going on across Europe, and that actually sort of white working class lads are the people that have got to try and stop it. And so you've seen defence leagues modelled on the EDL popping up across Europe over the past few years. It must be said, though, that none of them have been anywhere near as big or as successful as the original. This creeping Islamisation of across Europe that Tommy Robinson is so against, is there evidence that that's actually happening? Well, the interesting thing about this question, I think, is when you speak to members of the English Defence League, and I've spoken to lots of them, they will say that it is, and they will say that, and they will point to lots of articles from mainstream media all the way to niche and sometimes quite strange blogs, seeming to illustrate that is taking place. But they would say that, wouldn't they, the members of the EDL? Yeah, but that's the point. And nowadays it's quite easy to surround yourself with any media that you like online, which seems to justify your point of view. And if you like, I don't see the reality of a creeping Islamization. I do see that we have a problem with Islamist extremists in some parts of the country. I do see that we have a problem with Islamist terrorism in some parts of the country and in some parts of Europe. I don't see a much bigger creeping Islamization of the continent. But if you read certain things online, you will think that there is. And that's one of the reasons that they do this. Jamie, final question. Quilliam, what are your views on the organisation that Tommy Robinson has joined? I've worked with Quilliam for a long time, actually. They're a nice bunch of guys. I think it's quite sort of a brave move on their part as well as on Tommy's part. It's interesting that Quilliam was originally founded, of course, to look at Islamist extremism. But as the years have gone by, they've extended their reach and extended their purview, if you like. And I think I'm interested to see exactly what role Tommy's going to play in the group. You're at least vaguely optimistic about this, aren't you? I think in general that people do change their minds and do change their positions, and we live in a liberal democracy, and that's premised on the idea that people can change their minds, and you have to give them the chance to do. Jamie, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Jamie Bartlett from the think tank Demos. Tommy Robinson has left the EDL. Do you think this is a change of heart or a desperate bid for more publicity? Well, the two Luton-based leaders of the far-right English Defence League left the group, citing concerns over the dangers of extremism within their group. Tommy Robinson and his co-founder Kevin Carroll announced they're stepping down at a press conference in London last night, adding that their group had become, quotes, part of the problem. Well, we've been talking about this all morning. Our political reporter Paul Scoins is with me. You were at the press conference last night. What do we make of all this?
Well, I think it's just, we've heard from various commentators this morning about whether or not, or just how significant, I suppose, this is. And just, I suppose, how significant this group is, because if you look back to where it started from, it came from, a sense of sort of anger, frustration at what was perceived at that time in 2009 to be deeply offensive to people, where the Islamist extremists were protesting on the streets of Luton at the march of the Royal Anglian Regiment. Very high feelings, and the English Defence League, I suppose, was a reaction to that from these two Lutonians who've grown up here, who felt, a sense of pride. But they've been really under a lot of criticism for the way that they've conducted their operation. If you look at just the strength of the views that they've held, the way that they've expressed those views, the marches that they've held, the way that they've gone into communities and head first in some ways. You know, they've gone to Bradford, they've gone and marched through Luton. They've not been shy about sort of standing, you know, face to face with Muslims, and that for lots of people in those communities have been feeling that that's been very confrontational and has actually led to that sort of friction between those communities. And indeed now maybe you're looking at what they've said, where they have seen this group go. And Tommy Robinson said last night he was worried that this particular group has become infiltrated by right-wingers.
I feel awful and I feel terrible, and part of the reason why I haven't wanted to leave many times is because I haven't wanted to give splinter groups, extremists, a platform, which is why if you listen to what I'm saying, I don't want to just combat Islamist ideology now that I've left. I want to combat those splinter groups because I feel as passionately against them as I do against Muslim extremists.
So people are unsure whether his move is to be taken seriously. Is it possibly to mark a political campaign? We're not quite sure.
I don't know about the political campaign, if I'm honest. I'm not sure. I mean, we were told last night by Kevin Carroll. He said never say never. I'm not entirely convinced that there's would he run as an independent? Would he stand for council? I don't know, as he wants the hassle.
Not quite sure where he would sit. You spoke to Kevin Carroll. It was a cracking interview. If you want to hear a big chunk of the interview, do listen again on the BBC iPlayer. But about 4 minutes past 7 this morning. It'll also be in the podcast. But what did he have to say?
Well, we put to him the point that he and the group had reached a point where they had become almost a honeypot, if you like, and that's the word that they used for these sorts of groups, these far right extremist groups. This was what he said to me last night.
We still had control of it. This is what we're saying.
But Tommy said he didn't want to be the face of an organisation.
Just an organisation that allows them to come in as soon as we stop showing up. Now, you have to get it right. What we're saying is that unless we attend every single demonstration, these parasitical vultures, right, these neo-Nazi types, fascist, racist, whatever you want to call them, these splinter groups, well, they're always in the wings. They'd be there, but they couldn't come in.
You've created a monster, haven't you? Because you've basically created a group which is now, as you said, a honeypot to these sorts of groups, and you've just said, I don't want to do that anymore, and you've walked away.
No, what we've got is we've got an organised structure of regional organisers across the country. That's our structure. And then we have divisional leaders.
They're not working, are they?
No, but they're
not keeping those bad people out.
No, but what we're saying is to the regional organisers, we've got a big meeting with them tomorrow. So what we're saying to them is, look, it falls upon you now to remain true to what our core message was, which is non-violent. But we believe that it's run its course.
Big press conference last night, Paul. Do we know what happens next?
Well, I think it's a case of wait and see, really. Right. I mean, this Quilliam group are going to try and do some more work with them, and I think that they are going to try and see if they can perhaps broaden the number of people who become involved with that. I think there's a lot of questions to ask about this Quilliam group, to be honest. I think there is not a suspicion, but perhaps a scepticism within some parts of the Muslim community about this group, which is made up of former extremists. So, you know, there are some people saying once an extremist, always an extremist. Tommy Robinson, a.k.a. Stephen Lennon, is going to be part of a BBC documentary called When Tommy Met Mo, and that's coming on our screens at some point. He was saying today, although I've checked the Radio Times listings and the BBC One listings and 2 and 4 and 3, and there's nothing scheduled for today. So unless something happens later, I don't know. But that will be interesting, and that he says shows the journey that he's been on to come out of this. Okay. To come out of this group. So,
Paul Scoins, thank you very much indeed. Morning. Tommy Robinson has left the EDL. We've been talking about it all morning. Now it's time to get your views on this. Tim is in Milton Keynes. Morning, Tim.
Good morning.
Tim, what do you make of Tommy Robinson standing down and joining the Quilliam organisation?
Well, what I make of him, after so many years, after wasting police time, resources, council blocking roads, etc., and at the same time creating a monster group of divisional leaders, etc., if he couldn't handle them, what makes him think now that if he's joined against extremism, when he's been fighting against it, and with them, what's going to change now?
Do you not think, though, that what he said actually makes sense? He started the EDL, according to him, with the best intentions, and it has become a monster that he can't control anymore. And that by joining something like Quillian, it's a better established group as opposed to just a Facebook page.
Yeah, okay, it's a better established group, but at the same time, he's created the EDL. So when it comes to extremists, the EDL know everything about him and his family, the 12 members, the heads. Are his family safe now, what he's doing?
Well, I don't know if his family are safe.
Right, well, obviously the EDL going to retaliate against him. And at the same time, you've got...
So what do you think, Tim? What do you think Tommy Robinson should do then? Just disappear?
No, what I think Tommy Robinson should do then is wake up, because at the end of the day, I'm not being disrespectful. All this publicity, etc., you get paid from the papers, etc. He's fighting a losing cause, because you've got Africans out there, you've got Somalians, etc., you've got Muslims. Everybody's extremist. But when the word Muslims comes into effect, there are so many Muslims in the world, Pakistanis, Iranis, Egyptians, they're all fighting against each other. But why should the world fight? Why can't we live as two people? We've got the same eyes, hands, mouth, etc. We've been created from the Almighty above.
Tim,
let's live the life.
Tim, stay there. I want to bring Akbar in Luton into this. Akbar, what's your reaction to Tommy Robinson leaving the EDL?
Good morning. Good morning. My reaction to this is that I take my hat off to the population of Luton who never supported Tommy Robinson and EDL in any significant way. And I think he has taken the EDL to the extent he could. And I think he ran into a blind alley, and he couldn't sell his fake product anymore, and he has obtained massive publicity by this, and now I feel he's trying to chart a political route for himself. And
I disagree against that.
Go on, Tim.
I disagree against he's been making a fake product. Tim Robinson tried his best to make the EDL against Muslim extremists. Yeah. He didn't make a fake product. It's the people around him that's making the fake product. But at the same time...
Well, I'm entitled to my view, and lots of Muslim communities and people from other communities believe that what he was selling was a fake product, and EDL as an organization is a fake product, because it doesn't have any agenda apart from hating the Muslims, and that will not work, and that hasn't worked, and that has forced Tommy Robinson and his colleagues to leave.
But I respect your views, sir. I respect your views. What I'm trying to say is he wants to fight against extremists, these people who are, making Muslims out to be extremists. But every Muslim is not the same.
Okay, well, Tim, Milton Keynes, Akbar and Luton, we have to